I'll just say, Michael, it's my second time seeing that film, and it is so powerful, and all of the characters are so real.
Thank you.
Couple of housekeeping issues. Sorry, like after that emotional film, but I want to, we're live streaming, and I wanted to check with the panelists. Andy and Michael said they're okay, but I want to make sure. Duane and Leigha, welcome, Leigha. Are you okay if we live stream this discussion?
Sure.
Thank you. So I'll introduce our guests. I'll begin with Michael Kennedy, because she's the director of Creative Action Unlimited, and you will notice that she looks familiar because she also was in the film. And brilliant performance.
Thank you.
And Andy Gilpin is from Captain Community Services, and Leigha Rosenberger is from Veterans, I believe, Community and Housing Coalition in Boston Spa, and Duane Vaughn, Shelters of Saratoga. So I want to begin with just kind of like, I sent you an email earlier saying, like, what is the single most aspect of homelessness that you would like people to know? And it may or may not be related to the film we just watched, but I have a feeling it will be. How could it not be? And so if you could just, I guess begin with Michael. And also, if you want to say more about the film and how you made it, because it's just so beautiful.
Sure, thank you. Glad to be here. I'll just briefly say that all of the theater that's created at Creative Action Unlimited is about social issues. And this was our first film. We intended to have this be a stage production, but because of the pandemic, we were able to make a film, and I'm really grateful about that. But we used the same process that we would have if this had been a stage play, which is that we created this as a devised theater production. And it was based on writing that was done in rehearsals, and the writing was all done by the cast. And we all did our own research about the topic, and also did interviews with individuals who had been homeless, and folks from organizations in the community that serve the homeless population. So that was the foundation for the script. And I think from my perspective, the most important piece is how close we all are to being homeless ourselves. And that, one major loss could put us in a situation with at least instability, if not homelessness ourselves. And I think that that's so important for people to understand.
Yes, thank you, Michael. And I think what really hit me was when your partner in the film said the system is based on the assumption that we're lying, that we're liars, and that we're scamming the system. And that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add that I love, like, everyone to say a little bit about what you do as well. And after you have your couple of minutes, we definitely want to bring the audience in for Q&A. So just letting people know, you can raise your hand, and I can unmute you, or you can write a question in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. But again, I know that's challenging for me to try to think and write at the same time. So I'm happy to read your question, or unmute you and you can speak. Andy, why don't you, you're next on my screen, so I'll ask you to go next.
Sure, thank you very much. And thanks so much for having me tonight. And just, Michael, what a beautiful film. I mean, really, really amazing. So thank you for that. Yeah. And I guess a takeaway for me, I mean, it captured in the film very beautifully, like how many different people can be affected by homelessness. It's not just a youth or a veteran or a family. I mean, it caught everything, which is really important to understand for everybody, that homelessness cuts across all spectrums and can affect so many different people. So I think that was important. It really did capture that. So thank you for doing that. Um, and for Captain, so Captain Community Human Services, we're involved with homelessness and housing issues. We've been in the community since 1977 and have spent over 40 years on the issue. Most of our programs have kind of come out of youth services for homeless youth, which was captured in the film as well, that's a big aspect of homelessness, that youth are faced with some of the same challenges as well. But we also do a lot with families and those people who are either truly homeless or facing eviction, so eviction prevention. There's a lot of different programs we do with that too. So we're involved in a lot of different aspects, as well as a community that is trying to prevent and end homelessness in Saratoga County.
Having trouble unmuting myself. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
How about Duane?
Hi, thanks for having me also. Michael, nice job on this.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I recognized pretty quickly, that the people that were in your film or depicted in your film is every day at shelters of Saratoga. That's exactly what we see. It's exactly what we come in contact with on a daily basis. And just to give you an idea, breadth of homelessness in our communities, and it's not just an upstate problem or a Saratoga problem. It's a national issue. One thing that came to mind here when we showed the different ages in the film is currently at shelters of Saratoga, the difference between our youngest house guest and our oldest house guest is 67 years in between them. So this can affect everybody of all ages, just like Andy said. The good news is that this community in Saratoga is really come together from what I can see, especially over the last few months. A lot of the agencies, the three of us I know, we're all working together to help solve this issue right now. But there's a lot of different factors that affect homelessness, and you touched on quite a few of them there in this film. There's a lot more, and you're absolutely right when so many people are one mishap away from becoming homelessness. There's some very good studies out there. For example, through the United Way, there's the ALICE study that's easily to research, but there is a strong part of our population that is struggling right now, and I'm very concerned about what's happening next.
I will add ALICE for people who aren't familiar with the acronym. Asset, limited, income, constrained.
Trained, yep.
And employed.
And employed, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that just expands the number of people who are living really on the edge, and that one paycheck away from being homeless. Thank you, Duane. And Leigha, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for having me. And just really echoing what Andy and Duane said. I mean, what a beautiful film, and really capturing what we see on a daily basis in this community.
Thank you.
So I run all of our programs at Veterans and Community Housing Coalition. So we provide transitional and permanent supportive housing for veterans and their families. A big takeaway from the video for me was when they're talking about all these different acronyms and all the different services that you're trying to apply for, and especially with veteran services. So as a non-for-profit agency that functions off of federal and state grants, we see a lot of barriers when it comes to the bureaucracy of trying to get veterans the benefits that they're entitled to. And they do. After a while, they're saying, I've told my story. 12 different times, how many more times do I have to say it so I can get some benefits? And going back to them saying everybody's out to scam. So I see a little bit of a different side when there's a true entitlement to what they did do in serving their country. And also, what Duane was just saying is really interesting in our transitional program. The youngest veteran that we have residing there right now is 22 years old, and the oldest is 87. And that's a huge component living in the transitional programs, is that peer support that we see among the veterans and trying to recover, heal, and transition back.
So thank you, all of you. And I have a question, and I want to, there's one in the chat. I see so far just one question or two from one person. But I'm thinking of, I'm not sure if it was Duane who talked about the response of Saratoga Springs in this area. And I'm curious about that. There have been times when Saratoga has had some very intolerant responses, and I think that continues. So yeah, there's this generous outpouring, but I don't know if that's the overarching attitude. Like where to locate a permanent shelter, and the complaints about people who are homeless on the street. And at one time, a couple of years ago, they were even talking about ticketing people. It was crazy. So, and with COVID, we know all of this is getting worse. And so I'm just curious how what you think the climate is, and this is to all the panelists about in Saratoga Springs for addressing these, assisting people who are homeless.
Well, I can talk a little bit about this if you would like. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that, first of all, it's not against the law to be poor. And to arrest people or to say, well, you need to be bussed out of here or taken out of the, moved to another state or to another city or something like that. That's just, it's not, this is a human issue. It's not a political issue. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to focus on along the lines of a lot of us that work in this, Andy and Leigha. We're doing our best to try to educate our community about homelessness, that there's so many different factors that play into someone. And it may not be just one. It may not just be mental illness. It may not be just substance abuse and addiction. There's many factors that could be, everything from childhood or adult trauma or domestic abuse. Those factors really play into a lot of different things. And to get out of the way of homelessness is just not simple as going out and getting a job. It's really hard to focus on the next moves in your life when you're trying to figure out how you're going to eat. That's something that we certainly take for granted. We know when we get up in the morning, we're going to have breakfast, that it's going to be in the refrigerator or in the cupboard or something like that. There's a lot of people that are on the streets that, that's going to be the first thing that they're going to think of besides their shelter. So, I saw in the question, is it a good idea to give people money on the street? I would just like to leave that is, I would support those agencies that are helping homelessness. There's a lot of agencies like ours that are on this panel that have care managers, have outreach, have people on the street working with people, and they're professionals. They're the ones that are that tend to build relationships with the people that we serve. We're going to do our best to earn their trust and try to move them in a transitional way out of homelessness, whether it's into shelter first, and then into maybe transitional living or permanent supportive housing, and then on to maybe permanent housing, because that's the goal. That's how we get net zero in the end, is get people housed. I think the thing is that by giving someone money on the street, you may be taking care of that initial need right then and there, maybe where they can get, a lunch or a breakfast or something like that. But my advice is to get behind the agencies, support those agencies that are out there doing the work. that's why we're there. We know how to be safe when we do this. We know how to handle people with mental illness or substance abuse and things like that. So I would encourage people to take a look at us, take a look at what we're doing and who we are.
Thank you, Duane. Does anybody want to? I was asking about kind of the climate of Saratoga. I don't know if you responded to that, and I don't want to put you on the spot because it's political. It is political,
Sure.
right? Like, and this is live stream. You don't want to like make anybody unhappy and say anything critical. So, but I want to know your experience because you all are working and connecting with other organizations and people. So I was really curious how you find the climate in Saratoga Springs, Saratoga County. I think, Leigha, you're based in Boston Spa. And you're all over the place.
Yeah.
Captain is all over the place.
Yeah.
I really want to know.
I think the community, the city and the county, we have a very good relationship with the county. I believe that they're behind us 100%, that they want to solve this issue too. I think relationships are really good with both of those entities right now. It's a difficult task because in the political landscape, they're not going to be able to make everybody happy when it comes to this topic. But I do believe they're trying. I truly believe that, both on a city and a county level.
Yeah, I really agree with Duane, and I think that a huge part of it is that we've recently partnered with, Department of Social Services and have the county's backing in combating a really big issue of so many people being threatened with evictions and being on the streets right now. That this was really one of the first times that there's been a big collaboration between the county having some funding and wanting to partner with the continuum of care to include myself, Duane, Andy. They see the efforts that we're trying to make and they want to try to support them. I truly believe as much as they can.
Yeah, and I'd echo, same thing that Leigha and Duane are saying, but I really feel the last few months have really gotten to the point where we have a much bigger collaboration than we've had ever before. We have more people around the table now. We have more organizations working together. We have a whole new dialogue of communication that's happening, and we're really starting to look at all the ways we can collaborate in a much better way. Leigha mentioned the funding. There's definitely the availability of additional funding is helping right now, but we're looking at it as a countywide issue and focusing on all aspects where it happens. If it's somewhere in Saratoga Springs, or if it's in Boston Spa, or maybe Corinth, or maybe Mechanicville, Clifton Park, whatever it is, you're seeing all aspects of those different communities that are being affected by this, and we're all communicating about that. And I did want to add too that with this, Leigha mentioned continuum care. I'm not sure if people know, but for years and years, organizations funded through HUD have been working together in the same collaborative fashion. So we're really just adding more members to this, to what is going to become, I think, just a more cohesive group working together. Less silos, less people thinking about some sort of assumed responsibility, or it falls with this one or that one. No, it's us working together because we're all in it together.
And just like they were saying, it's not just one issue or one problem or one incident that leads to the homeless situation. Duane was talking about some of these things can stem from childhood. So by having a continuum that works together, we have the homeless shelter, then we have family programs through captains, we have veteran services, and we have domestic violence services, because those wraparound services are needed on several different aspects to address all the issues together.
Yeah, one other aspect of homelessness, I think, that is the at-risk population. Leigha touched on it just for a second there, and I commend her for that, because I think that's the underpinning of a lot of this. The Alice group we talked about, the people who are just basically making that basic budget and sometimes not. For Saratoga County, that's almost 34% of people. If you add poverty and Alice together, you're talking almost 1 in 3 people are on that just razor thin edge between housing and homelessness. And the prevention services that our organizations all together can work on are on that eviction prevention, because right now, in the time of COVID and even prior to this, but now even more, people don't have the same resources they did. Less hours, maybe not working at all, accumulating debt within that housing. I really do think, and I think we all agree on this, there's going to be that sort of tidal wave when the moratoriums on evictions are kind of come to an end. There's going to be a lot of people that are behind, and really need to focus on that at-risk population, because they will be the next that are going to become homeless if they can't get the resources needed to make sure that the rental arrears are taken care of. And then we're talking about families at that point too, lots of families. So lots of kids being disrupted, school districts change, just really a lot of chaos within the community.
Yeah. So as you speak, more and more questions now are coming in. So let
Sure.
me, I guess I'll read, I'm going to go back. A comment, the documentary was moving. Do you have plans to show this to the Department of Social Services as both a sensitizing film and to work toward changing the system that propagates the problem of homelessness? That I am curious about how widely you would like to distribute this, Michael.
I would love to distribute it very widely, and we have tried to price it in a way that makes it available pretty easily to either individuals and organizations. Would love to have the staff of Department of Social Services in many different counties watch the film, and would be happy to do a talk back with them as well. I've worked in human services in the area for 35 years. So I think that the social services and disability scenes are particularly accurate, and I know how hard it is to get our message across, and possibly if this film could help with that. So I saw that question, and I just put in the chat that the film's available, and all you need to do is email me about licensing information. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So please, if you're interested, don't hesitate.
Thank you, Michael. And contact me. So I'm not only am I part of MLK Saratoga, I work for Catholic Charities of Saratoga, Warren, and Washington County. And, we're involved in a network that does emergency assistance. And that's a network with a lot of nonprofits and churches. The faith community is often, the one that's filling in the gaps with the nonprofits. So I could imagine us collaborating on some kind of large training opportunity for our employees and bring the county in on it. So what else? Your names and the names of your organizations are not visible to us as viewers. That's interesting. So Andy Gilpin works for Captain Community Services, located in, you're like Clifton Park. You have multiple.
Yeah, we have multiple locations. Clifton Park, Glenville. Most people know us from Clifton Park area, Southern Saratoga County. That's one of our main hubs and offices, but we have some other programs in and around. One of the ones we're really proud of, Saratoga Springs over in West Avenue, the new Entrada facility that has 158 units of affordable housing. We actually have 10 of those are supportive housing for youth 18 to 25, and we have our street outreach team based there. So and huge kudos to Michael for calling out the street outreach team. I really love that. That's such an important link to getting connected with folks, is actually people there willing to be on the streets, trained professionals, talking with people, and that engagement to get them to move down the line to permanent housing. So thank you for calling out street outreach.
Sure.
Vaughn is with Shelters of Saratoga, and which is how also is the umbrella program for Code Blue. And then Leigha Rosenberger, the Veterans Community and Housing Coalition. You're located in Boston Spa?
Yeah, so our 2 transitional houses are in Boston Spa, and our main offices. However, we do serve 7 counties: Saratoga, Warren, Washington, Fulton, Montgomery, Schoharie, and Schenectady counties with rapid rehousing prevention for veterans and their families. So they don't have to necessarily be from those areas. They just have to be willing to live or locate to one of those areas. And then the transitional houses, we take referrals for veterans from across the country for that program.
Great. So Duane, you can add something. I'm going to give you a question, and you can add to it anything you want about your organization.
Sure.
The film was extremely well done. Thank you for making it. Do your agencies need volunteers?
Well, Yes, we do. But however, right now, because of COVID, we have basically suspended volunteer activity. One of our concerns is even though we need volunteers always, um, right now to try to keep everybody safe. Not just our house residents and our clients at Code Blue, but we need to keep our staff safe from exposure because if we do get an exposure, we will shut down and we will have 60 people forced to the street. We'll be scrambling to try to get possible hotel rooms or something like that. It will be a monumental task to try to get all those people temporarily housed if we don't have Code Blue and we don't have our two shelter facilities. So right now, volunteerism is as much as I wish we could do it, we can't do it right now in order to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, we're in the
And
same
we're
boat. I know
really,
it. Oh, go ahead, Leah.
no, go ahead, Andy. That's okay.
I was going to echo the same thing. We're really in the same place. It's unfortunate the way the numbers are spiking now and in and around the communities, but we've really pulled back too. We depend a lot on volunteers. We have so many different programs and services that couldn't run without them, and we value more than you know the volunteers. But it's just not quite the time right now. Hopefully, in a few months, we'll get past some of these numbers, and then those volunteers, if you're very interested in homelessness is an issue, any one of our agencies, and there's several more that would be willing to take your time and talent and help give back to the community. So thank you.
Mhm. So we're really doing the same thing. We're not having any volunteers in the offices or in the houses. However, what we are doing, we've been trying to get a little creative, is that one thing that we do is we take furniture donations and household items as donations so that when the veterans are transitioning out of transitional housing or any of the rapid rehousing families, that they have some starter furniture and household items to use. So the only real volunteering we're taking is if anybody's willing to pick up furnitures or items like that and deliver them to the offices, we are taking that.
Thank you. So I was told to move my mic closer to my mouth. I hope everybody can hear and I'm not yelling. Christy asks, can you speak to the invisible folks who are experiencing homelessness, couch surfing, for instance, but not necessarily considered to be without a home?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So we really
that,
see that. Go ahead, Andy.
No.
You
I
and
did
I are
last
always
time.
talking over each other.
I know.
Your turn to go first, Leigha.
Among the veteran population, that is probably one of the highest rates that we have is couch surfing, especially among the female veterans. They're either choosing to stay in these unhealthy, or not choosing to per se, but feeling like they don't have any other options, whether they have children, staying in abusive relationships, sleeping on couches, bouncing from family to family or wherever they can. A lot of times we also see that, and Michael really depicted it well in the video, that they don't want to move into shelters where they're bunking, and it reminding them of being in the barracks and having to take care of anybody else. So they're making a choice to stay in unhealthy situations, stay on couches and things of that nature. So when it comes to the invisible population, that's something we're definitely seeing frequently. And we're not always getting the captured numbers that we need to know how many are out there to continue to spread our education and services so that they can get into the proper type of housing that meets their needs.
Yeah. And just to echo the same thing, it's when you talk about the hidden population, right? The only, the highly visible is folks that you may see in program or on the street who maybe have chronic issues, chronic homelessness issues. And so there is a real large part of people that are a group of folks experiencing homelessness that will never kind of touch program because of either couch surfing or other things. And you're right that it's a very much a hidden population, and youth for sure. Youth fall into that 100%. We find many youth are couch surfing, moving between different family members, friends, acquaintances, sometimes people they don't even know, and trying to find their way because they've been kicked out. They're not welcome at home. They can't make it work with the family or guardian. Many of the youth that come to us in our youth shelter or through our street outreach program have been couch surfing for months before they begin engagement with us. And that is the hidden population. And a lot of that has to be definitions too. I think that people understand that between federal, state, changing definitions of what qualifies as homelessness opens up broad arenas of how we can really help. When you are clearly defined under your funding sources by certain definitions, you're not able to help in the way you really would want to.
Mhm.
Or in a couple of weeks, there every year there's what's called the pit count, the point in time count, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, I believe, where we do the best that we can to try to count the number of homelessness in our communities, and those people we're not reaching. But those people are still going to emergency rooms and seeking help there, but we're unable to count them, which is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somebody wrote to all panelists, and it might have already been addressed. I'm kind of multitasking, so forgive me. But Christy said, "Wonderful job. I do think words matter. Folks experience homelessness, which is different than being a homeless person.
Mm-hmm.
One implies a hopefully temporary condition versus a label that organizations like DSS use as shorthand, which I think dehumanizes these people."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I can just respond to that, Christy, I saw your comment and just wanted to apologize. I suspect that I may be somebody who used a kind of outdated language from having been around in human services for so long, and now having been outside of an organization for long enough that I'm not up to date. But I certainly agree with you that the people need to come first. So it's people who are homeless, people who are experiencing homeless, not homeless people. Thanks.
In the film, there's one thing that I noticed is when they went to a government agency for help, I think, I don't know, Michael, maybe you can straighten me out on this, but that perception that I saw in that was the language that they were hearing or that they were saying to me looked like the language that they're receiving when you're looking for services. It's very hard to go to places like this and seek out help. They the people that we serve, they walk into government facilities to seek help, and it's embarrassing. Um,
Mhm.
it's a real blow to their dignity. It's not easy to ask for help. We're not built that way as humans, I don't think anymore, unfortunately. And that can be very difficult. And when they hear those acronyms come flying at them, and maybe those caseworkers may seem short, or, I think the thing is that that's what they're hearing. Even though we know, working with a lot of agencies like DSS and things like that, there's a lot of compassionate people that do work in that field. We know a lot of case managers that really want the best for everybody, and it's a difficult job, and that's what they see every day. Um, but it's very difficult for the clientele that we serve, and not to mention some other barriers that they might have. For example, literacy and some components like that, and if they have mental health or substance abuse,
Right.
difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I would actually like to speak to that for a minute. So I agree. In every organization, in every social services office, there are folks who really care and who are going the extra mile for the people who are applying. I used to be a DSS advocate, and I trained peer advocates to go with folks to DSS to apply. So I really just, and your point is well taken. I think it sounds like so many of your organizations have advocates and case managers as part of your organization. And I can't speak more strongly about the importance of having an advocate go with someone, or a peer go with someone, because it is a very daunting system. So not trying to call out any individual at disability or at social services, but I will say that based on my decades of experience, that these offices are set up in a way they're designed in a way to discourage people from successfully completing an application. And I don't think that's one person's decision, but if you go into any DSS office, I'm thinking of one in particular where the waiting room has all children's furniture in it and no adult chairs. That kind of thing is, somebody made a choice about that, and there's a lot of stigma about it, and it's demeaning. And I wish that we could create a system where people feel more comfortable asking for help, as you said, Duane.
Yeah, I hear those stories all the time about, like, I'm very aware of the compassionate person who means well, but I think overall, it's like any other system, there's a dehumanizing aspect. And if you work in that system, you're also dehumanized. And, and it's passed down, right? It's just like you're like a caste system. And it's very problematic. And I think, given that this is, we're here to, this is part of the weekend to honor Dr. King, who was always saying how we take care of our most vulnerable. Like, and when we take care of and lift the most vulnerable, that is when we're all going to be better. And I think of that, how we all suffer. Like, whether it's the worker who has to kind of shut down and kind of detach because this is the 100th person they've talked to that they have to say no to. Like, she just keeps saying, okay, I understand. Okay, I understand. Because like, what if she, like, were to actually hear and take in that pain and that panic and feel helpless in responding to it. And just like, I feel like it's very hard for us to take in when we walk by someone who is in clearly bad shape and pain and appearing to not have housing. And when do I take the time to look at somebody in the eye and say, good afternoon, hello? And when am I just feel like I'm too busy, I can't stop and engage. So we all have to kind of be aware of that.
So Holly, if I can interject one thing here, because I did see a question in addition
Please.
to financial support of your organizations. This was from Stacy. How can I and others make a positive impact on those in need within the community? And you kind of just touched on it, showing empathy and compassion, caring. Of course, for us to do our work, it costs money. We understand that, just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean that the light bill doesn't come and, or rents or mortgages and things like that. We all have those. I think that you can look at our websites. We'll do our best to try to keep those updated on what some of our needs are. And I think, when we talk about the empathy and compassion and being kind to one another, and I think Michael did a great job in this movie of showing how difficult homelessness is from the eyes from them instead of from the eyes of the agency or the community or something like that. And I think that's what's important. That's probably what's not shown enough. But if you really look at some of the people that are on the street, who maybe have not connected to services or have decided they're not ready for services, it's a couple of weeks ago there was 31 inches of snow on the ground. It was 20 some degrees, and they were still outside. So how much pain does somebody have to be in to be able to endure that? I think we need to recognize that. We need to recognize and step outside ourselves a little bit and understand that their pain is deep. This, I don't think when you used to open up the penny saver and you'd see all the comments from the kindergartners that said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I don't think any of those kids ever said, "I want to be homeless." Um, this is where we're at today, and if we could just show a few of those, that understanding of our community a little bit better, we're going to make huge strides.
And just echoing off of what Duane's saying, realizing that, while they're still out there and they might still be on the streets and they haven't engaged yet, this is the whole point of why the street outreach is out there, is to try to start just planting the seed a little bit and letting them know what is out there and when they're ready. Because I think we also all know that meeting any of them with like the least amount of resistance in hopes that they can make their own decision when they're ready to come in You cannot force housing on anyone. You can't force support services on anyone. So as long as they just know that the resources are out there when they're ready, that there's a hand waiting for them, I think that, speaks volume.
Mhm.
Like so many things in with us today, when it comes to working with homeless, just like anything, it's all about relationships. It's about building relationships and trust. Until we can do that, they're not going to seek help. They won't ask for our help, um, and until we have that trust. And that's not easy to gain sometimes when these people have they've seen nothing but mistrust or disappointment or um, heartache their entire lives. Um, so to think that we can go out in just a couple of visits with outreach and establish a relationship with some of our clientele, it won't happen in one time. It takes a lot of work. Our outreach people are really special people. They really enjoy that work. They're very good at what they do, and they're the ones that are going to make those first steps to getting the people that our most vulnerable populations moved up the scale into supportive housing or shelter.
So we're coming to the close of our program. So there are a couple of questions that I wanted to get to so that we don't, somebody said they just donated. Molly said,
Yeah, I saw that.
SOS. Perhaps
Good
put
job,
links
Duane.
for the rest in chat. So if you all want to put in, if you have links or at least the names
Sure.
of the organization, that's a great idea, Lolly. Thank you. Lolly also asked, is there any current legislation, any bills under consideration at the state level that address excessive paperwork or excessive paper? Anyway,
Mhm.
is there any, I was going to ask if there's any legislation in general and then that we should be
No,
aware of to support.
Yeah, I know at the federal government level, they have been working on this, and maybe Leigha has a little bit better information on the veterans, although I don't know how the VA system works, but I know they do try to do paper reduction as a means to try to consolidate things. And I think that the state probably has to catch up a bit on that. There still is lots and lots of paper, and I don't know how much they're moving to an online platform. That takes investment for sure. It takes investment at the state level to say we have to update systems within Department of Social Services and other places so they have that capacity. I believe they're probably still working off 20-year-old systems and probably working to catch up. So, but it does highlight that really good, which I think everybody's kind of talking about, that good partnership between government and non-government agencies, right? That there's things that government agencies can do, but then there's a lot that the non-government agencies like the nonprofits and the faith groups and community organizations that fill and help support communities. So it's that partnership and working together that we just got to continue to work to close that gap so that that we all sort of have a specialty that we can help, and again together, as kind of a one driving force. How do we work towards ending that homelessness? And I did notice Janet's question about the is there enough case managers? We're getting there. This new funding that is available, that came into the county, allowed for basically we have 5 different teams now, street outreach, and 8 different organizations that are actually being funded from this that can bring people on to do rapid rehousing, to do the street outreach, supporting emergency shelters, to do the work for eviction prevention. The city of Saratoga Springs has additional funding that they got through the CARES Act, where they're doing work to rapidly house and prevention, homeless prevention. So there's a lot more that's recently been put into the community than it ever has been. So I think we're in a really good spot with the potential to have big impact on the issue.
Thank you for.
Yeah, to kind of speak back to like HUD and the VA and more the federal government side of things, I would love to say that there's less paperwork when it comes to the VA, but there's not. But again, talking about the partnership, so we work really closely with a couple of the social workers in the homeless program down at the Stratton VA. So they really work as our linkages to directly in the hospital, for psychiatric assistance, substance abuse, and even just healthcare, getting them enrolled in benefits. So that's that going back to like not one single person can help one person who is experiencing homelessness. It really does take a team from several different entities to try to get them all of their needs. So, but one day I'm staying hopeful that we'll have just a little bit less paperwork.
Mhm.
We still have a lot of paperwork to do.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a constant process of refining. We got to get to where we're just keep trimming away. Throw 2 or 3 pieces of the forms away every day, so we have a little bit less.
So any final comments, any final asks of our wonderful audience?
I think it's really about educating the community and continuing to educate the community on the different programs and services that are out there. We have, through the continuum of care that Andy talked about, we have a coordinated entry, and this is a process where several different agencies, anytime they come in contact with somebody who might be experiencing homelessness or on the brink of homelessness, can get linked to services rather quickly if they're ready and willing. So I think the more we as agencies continue to educate the community so that they can continue to plant that seed if they come across someone or know someone that's struggling, know somebody that might have lost their job and they're going to be looking at eviction soon or can't get food on the table or are in need of healthcare services, that the community knows how and where to refer them to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just continue to help move the conversation forward in a positive way. That we talk a lot of times about that, maybe somebody else's responsibility. I mentioned this earlier. It is a shared responsibility from the entire community, the entirety of Saratoga County, and just keep moving that conversation forward and don't let it get distraction on, why it should be here, or why it shouldn't be there, or why we shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. Look for the positive solutions because they're out there. And our group, when we work together, we definitely have best practice we draw in. We've been working really hard on lots of different directions and have had plenty of successes. And if, like Leigha's saying, we can get in behind that and educate the community of what that looks like, I think they would rally around the idea and the ideas of how we can really help.
Yeah, we've all been doing articles in Saratoga Today that have been addressing this. I think there's been three monthly articles that have come out so far. Everything from understanding what some of these agencies do to some success stories. The other thing too is to keep looking at things like that. Keep watching out for people like Michael who are making films like this that are putting a face to this is really important. Like this does, really gives the view from where it needs to come from. So that's what I would take away from this. Make sure we just pay attention and don't let this slip off our radar because it's not going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I just want to add before we end and support the arts because we are really struggling right now during the pandemic and lots of artists and arts companies are going under. And I believe very strongly that the arts are one of the main ways to increase empathy about very difficult issues in the community. So think about the arts when you're thinking about all the different components of the community that can work together about an issue.
So yes, and I thank you all for being here tonight. All of our panelists, Andy, Michael, Leigha, Duane, Leslie, Garland, and Bailey, who are our tech crew, thank you. And to everyone who attended tonight. We did lose a little by attrition, but a lot. Thank you for hanging out to the end. I want to say, our quote, what affects one directly affects all indirectly. And thank you, Leslie, for reminding me of that. And we have tomorrow morning our day of service, which is largely virtual. The exception is a couple of drives, and one is for SOS. We have, there is a collection site. I don't know the details. You'll have to go to our website for like socks and snack packs for kids. And then we're also doing a food pantry drive all weekend tomorrow between 10 and 2 for Franklin Community Center. And of course, all agencies accept cash. And tomorrow, our keynote slide just went up. We're going to have a community celebration with a few different speakers and performers, but our keynote is Dr. Loretta Ross, who will speak about calling in the calling out culture. So on that note, I want to thank you all again and wish you a very good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Stripped of the right to make decisions concerning his life and destiny, he has been subject to the authoritarian and sometimes whimsical decisions of the white power structure. The plantation and the ghetto were created by those who had power both to confine those who had no power and to perpetuate their powerlessness. Now, the problem of transforming the ghetto, therefore, is a problem of power. Confrontation between the forces of power demanding change and the forces of power dedicated to the preserving of the status quo. Now, power properly understood is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, and economic change. Walter Reuther defined power one day. He said, power is the ability of a labor union like UAW to make the most powerful corporation in the world, General Motors, say yes when it wants to say no. That's power. Now, a lot of us are preachers, and all of us have our moral convictions and concerns, and so often we have problems with power. There is nothing wrong with power if power is used correctly. You see, what happened is that some of our philosophers got off base. And one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites. So that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. It was this misinterpretation that caused the philosopher Nietzsche, who was the philosopher of the will to power, to reject the Christian concept of love. It was the same misinterpretation which induced Christian theologians to reject Nietzsche's philosophy of the will to power in the name of the Christian idea of love. Now, we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that